Hello everybody, this is Ron Ray as always. You may think that I have a Wendy's cold brew with no ice. In fact, that is what I had yesterday, put in the fridge when I went to bed at 5 p.m. And then I finished this morning, and then I filled this up with homemade macchiato. So we're off to a good start today. I wanted to read y'all a comment because I've noticed that, hey, don't do that. Sorry, she was trying to eat something inedible. I've noticed that with YouTube, so basically I sucked at YouTube and I was excellent at Facebook. I was a rage baiter and I was good at it too. And then I transitioned to YouTube, and I've been striving to become a nicer person. And I've been getting back to my educational roots, where my passion was for spreading knowledge and spreading awareness and acceptance of disabilities and marginalized groups. My dog is currently hiding because I dropped the makeshift tripod on the couch while he was over here, and now he doesn't trust me. So if you hear him tippy tapping around, that's what's going on. But on Facebook, if you made a comment in a group, your friends and family would occasionally be invited to that group via that comment. It was very strange. And YouTube does not do that. You have to be following the channel on which they commented for it to pop up at all. So let me, this short I'm replying to is about professional cleaning ladies and how it is not part of standard cleaning to move your oven out of the way to clean behind. That's part of when you're moving into or out of an apartment or a house. You get that done then. But if you want them to clean behind the oven, you either have to pay extra or do it yourself. It's just not respectful to say that a cleaning lady has done a bad job when she didn't do something that wasn't in the job description. I completely agree, and the short is by Ann Russell 03. Lovely lady. I just left a comment. So I will read it to you. I am a hoarder. More on that later. I hired a team of 2 ladies to clean my abode, a little house on a hill with 2 acres that I bought in November 2022 using inheritance that I received at a painfully young age. Part of my myriad of diagnoses involves schizophrenia, which was worsened by a traumatic brain injury in, you guessed it, 2022, only months before I bought my house. Let's just say I like to look on the bright side and say I got the acute phase of schizophrenia over with early for a female patient. I'm currently aged 28 and sane again in the residual phase. One of the symptoms people don't know about from schizophrenia is doing things in the wrong order, such as putting on shoes before socks, flouring the pan before you grease it, pouring batter before greasing and flouring, conditioner before shampoo, and drumroll please, mopping before sweeping. This act cemented the grime into the corners of my kitchen floor. The ladies were hired so that the cleaning my dual contamination OCD doesn't allow me to do could be done, and they did a valiant job of organizing, wiping counters, and sweeping, but ran out of time before mopping and even looked intimidated at the task. So I decided I'd do it myself the hard way. I took a paint scraper and scraped the baked on grease and mopped and dried cat fur and dust, and I mean for hours and hours. 10 hours later of scraping and eventually mopping with my OCD approved cleaner, Simple Green, not a sponsor, got the job done. Never expect a cleaning professional to have more time and motivation to clean the way you like it as much as you do. A lot of people don't know what schizophrenia actually is, and they think they know what it is. And it creates not only misinformation, but also a stigma. One of the red flags that I notice in people is when they refer to their schizophrenic loved one as a paranoid schizophrenic. Particularly if this person was diagnosed this side of the century. We don't separate schizophrenics into paranoid, disorganized, or combination, or catatonic. Because we have learned to recognize that most people with schizophrenia have a combination of those profiles and try to treat it as an archetype. It just limits your ability to treat the patient. So if you were not diagnosed with schizophrenia in, say, the 70s, then you're probably not a paranoid schizophrenic. You're just a schizophrenic. Or, a lot of people like to phrase it as someone living with schizophrenia. As opposed to identity first language, they put person first language, which is the opposite of in autism, which is brain cousins with schizophrenia. In autism, most people would like to say that they are autistic. They do not say, I am a person who lives with autism. So always check what community you're talking about, see what they like to refer to themselves as before you assume. One of the symptoms of schizophrenia is psychosis. Everybody has heard of a hallucination. And most people who have heard of a hallucination have heard of a delusion. These are the hallmarks of psychosis, but they are not the end-all be-all of psychosis. With hallucinations and delusions tends to come, in schizophrenia, a speech pattern of sorts, or several speech patterns of sorts, called schizophasia. This can present itself as word salad, where they put, it's not even that okay, so you've played the game Ad Libs or Mad Libs, where they tell you to write down a noun and then a color and stuff like that. And it's all in an order that makes sense. This is the opposite. Schizophasia is when the words are defined by the situation, but the syntax and the grammar of these sentences does not make sense in English or whatever language you are speaking of. But don't quote me on any other country. I don't know anything about anything outside of America. I know that in sub-Saharan Africa, if you have schizophrenia, you hear the voices of your ancestors. You do not hear angry, demonic voices like we do in America. And it is seen as a blessing, not a curse. So remember that schizophrenia symptoms vary based off of culture. So a delusion is a pervasive belief that is not based in reality, and a hallucination is a perception, like with either tactile, which is touch, or olfactory, which is scent, gustatory, which is taste, audio, which is sound, and visual, which is vision. You can hallucinate any of the 5 or more senses. Pain is considered a distinct type of sensation separate from pressure. So if you distinguish the different types of touch, I have had hallucinations in all of them. I have tactile hallucinations, I have visual hallucinations, and I have audio hallucinations, auditory hallucinations as well. I do not usually hear voices. Usually. There are certain triggers that I have learned to avoid that make it so that I don't hear voices. I am more likely to feel ants crawling on and biting me. I'm used to it. I generally don't react to it, and as long as I can escape my triggers sufficiently, I tend to manage my symptoms pretty well. So as long as I keep my living environment clean enough that there's not bugs in it, I won't feel bugs crawling on me, because that's the trigger, is real bugs. Hallucinations and delusions are what everybody knows about schizophrenia, but people don't realize that there is those are what we call positive symptoms, as in they add to you. There are also negative symptoms of schizophrenia, such as not feeling the need to perform hygiene, not feeling the need to conform to social trends, missing social cues, stuff like that. That is a negative symptom, which means it takes away from you. So from baseline being a normal person without schizophrenia, you have both positive symptoms and negative symptoms. So where everybody else is at, they have stability, and you have psychosis and negative symptoms as well. When you don't have the negative symptoms associated with schizophrenia, however, you have the psychosis, that is called a psychotic disorder. You can have psychotic bipolar disorder, and that is distinct from schizoaffective disorder, which is where you have bipolar and schizophrenia, which is what I have. Now, you may think, schizophrenia plus bipolar, isn't that worse than schizophrenia alone? Kinda, sorta, but it has a better prognosis. It's less resistant to treatment than schizophrenia alone. It's easier to treat. It's easier to get to the residual phase. There's more likelihood of you becoming a productive member of society than there is with pure schizophrenia. In the 60s and 70s, we wrapped multiple personality disorder up with schizophrenia, and now the DSM-5 lists them separately. I have both. I have dissociative identity disorder, and I have schizoaffective disorder, which is schizophrenia plus a mood disorder, in my case bipolar. The difference is, with schizophrenia, you are out of touch with reality, whereas with dissociative identity disorder, you see reality through a different lens. The best way I would describe it is, schizophrenia is when your perception of reality is broken, and dissociative identity disorder is when your perception of reality is fragmented but functional. You can have multiple personalities or split personalities or parts, whatever you want to refer to them as, and be non-disordered. I'm not talking about endogenic systems right now. I am talking about healthy multiplicity. Healthy multiplicity can be as simple as keeping a journal successfully, or it can be where you no longer have amnesia to journal about. It looks different for each system of alters. And a system, for those of you who don't know, is the group of alters that inhabits one body. When you have a psychotic disorder that makes you hear voices, those voices on, I forget if it's a CAT scan or an MRI, because I'm not a scientist myself, I just love reading about science. when you have schizophrenia, your voice box does not move when the voices in your head talk. When you have dissociative identity disorder, your voice box gears up to move for each sound in the sentence that your alter says. It activates a part of the brain that is sentient. Schizophrenia is not sentient. It may be a facsimile of sentience, but it in and of itself is not sentient unless you're looking at it from a spiritual point of view, in which case I cannot be your guide on this because I'm a Sufi Muslim. I'm not a Buddhist. You know, I'm not from sub-Saharan Africa. The closest I get to tribalism is Cherokee Christianity, and we yeah, exactly. I know. So don't ask me about tribalism, schizophrenia. I don't know anything about it. All I know is that it's different from what I experience. But if you've never looked up what symptoms besides psychosis people with schizophrenia experience, I highly suggest it because I can't get to them all. Let me read to you a few blurbs. Okay, I was saying speech disorder earlier. That was in and of itself. What do you call them? Anyway, the correct term is thought disorder. Though. Get your mind out of the gutter. Thought disorder is when a person has ways of thinking that are unusual or illogical. People with thought disorder may have trouble organizing their thoughts and speech. They may stop talking in the middle of a thought, jump from topic to topic, or make up words that have no meaning. This is the symptom that I wish people hadn't ignored when I was experiencing it. When somebody is speaking to you and they have a thought disorder that is disturbing their ability to communicate, they are in danger from predators and potentially from themselves. And to ignore it and brush it off instead of taking them to the hospital is to be complicit in the abuse they face. Alright, negative symptoms include loss of motivation, loss of interest or enjoyment in daily activities, withdrawal from social life, difficulty showing emotions, and difficulty functioning normally. Negative symptoms include having trouble planning and sticking with routine activities such as grocery shopping, having trouble anticipating and being motivated by pleasure in everyday life, talking in a dull voice and showing limited facial expression, avoiding social interaction or interacting with socially awkward ways, having very low energy and spending a lot of time in passive activities. In extreme cases, a person might stop moving or talking for periods of time, which is a rare condition called catatonia. I experienced catatonia. At the end of my recent video titled Spiraling into Madness the Longer I Speak to Gemini Live, at the very end, I forget how long, well actually not forget, I didn't look. At the very end, I go into catatonia and I don't even bother to stop recording until you've witnessed the fucking catatonia I experience. So if you want to see what that looks like on camera, it's not really gaslighting. You know how the AI is so stupid and not grounded in reality? It's just trained on language. And so it cannot perceive itself, and therefore if you disagree with it, it will double down and say the thing you're perceiving is not real. And how if a human did that, it would be called gaslighting. That drove me insane. And I had catatonia on camera, so feel free to look at that video. Cognitive symptoms include problems with attention, concentration, and memory. These symptoms can make it hard to follow a conversation, learn new things, or remember appointments. A person's level of cognitive functioning is one of the best predictors of their day-to-day functioning. Healthcare providers use specific tests to evaluate cognitive functioning. Cognitive symptoms include having trouble processing information to make decisions, having trouble using information immediately after learning it, and having trouble focusing or paying attention. I have all of these. Risk of violence. Most people with schizophrenia are not violent. Overall, people with schizophrenia are more likely than those without the illness to be harmed by others. For people with schizophrenia, the risk of self-harm and violence to others is most significant when the illness is untreated or it co-occurs with alcohol or substance misuse. It is important to help people who are showing symptoms get treatment as quickly as possible. Schizophrenia versus dissociative identity disorder. Although some of the symptoms may seem similar on the surface, schizophrenia is not dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder or split personality. People with dissociative identity disorder have two or more independent identities with distinct behaviors and memories. That's the best point that you can make, is when you have voices from schizophrenia or from a psychotic disorder, they don't have a separate memory from you. They don't have a full-formed identity. They are just a voice. Possibly a pre-recorded voice from your childhood. Or from a movie. What causes schizophrenia? Several factors may contribute to a person's risk of developing schizophrenia. Genes. Schizophrenia sometimes runs in families. However, just because one family member has schizophrenia, it does not mean that other members of the family also will have it. Studies suggest that many different genes may increase a person's chances of developing schizophrenia, and that no single gene causes the disorder by itself. Environment, brain structure, and function. Research suggests that a combination of genetic factors and aspects of a person's environment and life experiences may play a role in the development of schizophrenia, including poverty, stressful or dangerous surroundings, and exposure to viruses or nutritional problems before birth. Brain structure and function. Research shows that people with schizophrenia may be more likely to have subtle differences in the size of certain brain areas and in connections between brain areas. Some of these brain differences may develop before birth. Researchers are working to better understand how brain structure and function may relate to schizophrenia. I remember when I got my traumatic brain injury, they had to put me into one of those things. It was not an MRI, but a CAT scan. I do remember, because my mom told me back when she was alive. They put me on a CAT scan to scan my brain and make sure they didn't have to do neurosurgery. And where was I going with this? Oh yeah, I told the lady who was doing the CAT scan, don't be surprised if you see some funky neuroanatomy. I have everything. And she's like, don't worry, I've seen it all. And then she immediately stopped talking when she saw the results. And I'm like, yeah. Have fun looking at that one. Alright, what else? How is schizophrenia treated? Antipsychotic medication. Yeah. Therapy and medication. And you're stuck with it for life. No, I'm kidding. Some people actually make a full recovery without medication. Especially in schizoaffective disorder. When you reach the residual phase, you are, however, stuck with what you have. So for me, I will be on medication for the rest of my life because I'm already in the residual phase, early for a female patient at 28. Usually you're in the acute phase at 28. Like you enter it at 28 for a female. And earlier for a male. Me, I entered the acute phase starting at age 22. So more in line with a male patient. However, I am hormonally intersex due to PCOS. So my testosterone levels are high. I don't know if you can really see, but I've got a brow ridge. And other features, like I've got, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a chin hair. Body hair and a low voice and the brow ridge. Yeah, just in general, I seem... Oh, besides the ridge up here, I don't have any space to put eyeshadow. And that is a distinctly male feature. So I have a bunch of male symptoms, even though I was assigned female at birth. My genitalia was not ambiguous at birth, and it's never been ambiguous. However, my hormones are ambiguous. So that can result in my schizophrenia acting more male. However, it's just different for everybody. You could have absolutely nothing else wrong with you, just schizophrenia, be female, and go through it early like I did, for absolutely no reason other than maybe you were in a car crash when you were 21, therefore you went through it when you were 22, because that car crash was the worst thing in your life. You almost died. And that causes PTSD, and PTSD can trigger schizophrenia. So, stay on the lookout if you're in your 20s. If you have friends either in their 20s or already diagnosed with schizophrenia and they start speaking incoherently, like using words, or actually, no, they could be speaking gibberish, take them to the hospital. That is a psychotic break that needs immediate medical evaluation. Like, do not pass go, do not collect $200, go to the hospital. However, don't be disappointed in them if substance use is the reason why they had the psychotic break. I mean, you can personally be disappointed, but don't express to them while they're in the hospital how disappointed you are, because they're not ready yet. When they get back to sanity and are in touch with reality again, then you can tell them, hey, you scared me. And I would really appreciate it if you never do that stuff again. Because, if you can, get their permission before they're psychotic, that if they are having psychotic symptoms, you can record. And show them when they come back from the psychotic break what symptoms looked like from your point of view. I have videos of me when I was in a dire shape, and playing them back makes me extremely uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable. Like, call 911 uncomfortable, So if me watching myself have symptoms makes me cringe, the king of cringe, just think about what it's going to be like for your loved one who actually has a sense of moral decency and social aptitude. Someone who actually tries to avoid being cringy. They're going to be really embarrassed. If me, who embraces cringe, is embarrassed, it's going to be bad. Alright, thank you all for listening. I will see you all in the next one. I hope you enjoyed. Love you. Bye.